You should start bringing your family in. That is the exact phrase. They don't look you in the eye when they say it. Doctors are trained in a very specific type of vocal anesthesia. They drop voices half an octave, they fold their hands on their desk, and they use words like aggressive, unresponsive, and palliative. But what they are actually saying is, the game is over. Clear out your locker. I was 48 years old. I felt perfectly fine, except for a lingering cough that wouldn't go away after what I thought was just a stubborn winter cold. The diagnosis was a rare, fast-developing pulmonary fibrosis. The prognosis was 4 months. 6. If I was extraordinarily lucky and willing to spend my final weeks hooked up to machines that would breathe for me. That was exactly 5 years and 2 months ago. I am still here. My lungs are scarred, I walk a little slower than I used to, and I carry a portable oxygen concentrator when the humidity is high. But I am breathing, I am speaking. I am alive in a way that confounds every single medical professional who looked at my charts half a decade ago. I am not here to sell you a miracle cure. Let me make that absolutely clear. I am not going to tell you that I drank a secret blend of exotic juices, or that I manifested my healing through crystal therapy, or that sheer stubborn willpower intimidated my own cells into repairing themselves. Science did its part. The experimental trials, the steroids, the brutal immunosuppressants, all of that is documented in a medical file that is thick enough to stop a bullet. But medical files only tell you how the body survived. They do not tell you how the body decided it is worth the effort to keep going. When you are given an expiration date, a profoundly strange psychological shift occurs. Most people assume that terminal patients immediately want to travel the world, jump out of airplanes, finally write that great American novel. The truth is much messier, much darker, and much more ordinary. Harrison gave me my 4-month deadline. I didn't want to go to Paris. I went home. I sat in my favorite armchair, the little one that I had 3 years breaking me in. Paris stared at the blank television screen for 8 consecutive hours. I was waiting to die. I spent the first 2 months behaving exactly like a ghost that hadn't quite figured out how to leave the house yet. My wife, Sarah, tried to be strong. She organized my paperwork, she called the lawyers, she sorted out the life insurance. She became the CEO of my departure. My teenage children started treating me like a museum artifact. Careful not to bump into me, careful not to speak too loudly, careful to always wear a tight, terrified smile when they entered the room. I was fading. The disease was progressing, yes. Apathy was killing me much faster than the fibrosis. I had surrendered to the narrative. And then a Tuesday happened. A profoundly inconvenient, chaotic, annoying Tuesday. It was month 3. I was, according to the schedule, supposed to be a mandatory for my silent decline. The house was quiet. Sarah was at the pharmacy. My kids were at school. And suddenly, a loud, violent snapping sound echoed from the basement, followed immediately by the sound of rushing water. A pipe had burst. Not just a small leak, a catastrophic, full-pressure rupture in the main line feeding the washing machine. I heard the water cascading down the stairs. My first instinct, pathetic as it sounds, was to just let it flood. I was dying. Why should I care if the unfinished basement turns into an indoor swimming pool? I wouldn't be around to deal with the mold or the insurance claim. Let the next guy deal with it. But then I thought about Sarah. Sarah, who was already carrying the crushing, unbearable weight of my impending funeral, coming home to find our basement destroyed because a dying husband was too paralyzed by self-activity to turn off a valve. I stood up. I haven't moved faster than a shuffle in weeks. Adrenaline is a hell of a drug. I grabbed a flashlight. I hobbled down the stairs, slipping on the wet concrete in my slippers. The water was spraying everywhere, cold and violent. I found the main shutoff valve behind the water heater. It was rusted entirely shut. I am not a strong man anymore. My muscles had atrophied from months of sitting in a chair waiting for the reaper. But I grabbed that valve with both hands, and I pulled with every sense of mechanical force my failing body could summon. Gasped for air, scarred lungs burning like they were inhaling battery acid. I screamed at the pipe. I actually screamed out loud. Not today! It's not today, Subaup! Vaug. Then it turned to the water stomach. I collapsed backward onto a pile of soggy cardboard boxes. I was soaking wet, freezing cold, my chest heaving, oxygen starvation making black spots stand my vision, and I started laughing. It started as a small, raspy chuckle, and then it turned into a full-bellied, uncontrollable roar of laughter. I laughed so hard my ribs ache. Why was I laughing? Because in that exact moment, grappling with a rusty piece of plumbing in a flooded basement, I wasn't a dying man. I wasn't a tragic medical case study. It wasn't a sad memory waiting to happen. I was a husband protecting his wife's home. I was a father making sure his kids didn't lose their photo albums to water damage. I was necessary. I was useful. That burst pipe didn't cure my pulmonary fibrosis, and it cured the fatal rot in my spirit. That day, sitting on the wet concrete, I made a decision that altered the trajectory of my entire existence. I decided that if I was going to die in a month, I was going to die mid-death stride. I was not going to die waiting in a chair. What kept me alive for the next 5 years wasn't a profound spiritual awakening on top pop. It wasn't positive thinking. It wasn't repeating affirmations in a mirror. What kept me alive was responsibility, the sheer, stubborn, unglamorous refusal to leave a mess behind. We are told constantly in our modern culture that the key to a happy life is freedom from obligation, freedom from stress, freedom from other people's expectations. We idolize the idea of running away to a beach and doing absolutely nothing. The human animal is not designed to a passive consumer of pleasure. We are designed to carry weight. Let me tell you about the 5 unexpected anchors that actually held my ship to the dock when the hurricane came. Anchor Merwal, an unfinished project. After the pipe incident, I looked around my house, really looked at it. The trim in the guest room I promised to paint 4 years ago. The squeaky hinge on the front door that drove Sarah crazy every morning. The disaster of Tanglewop bears behind the television. I didn't try to solve world hunger. I bought a can of WD-40. I bought a gallon of eggshell white paint. I bought some mid ties. Every single morning, instead of waking up and asking myself, is this my last day? I woke up and asked, what is broken in my immediate vicinity that I can fix? When you fix a squeaky door, you are asserting your presence in physicality. You are saying, I am here and my actions have an effect on this environment. It sounds ridiculous. It sounds trivial. But when you are staring into the infinite abyss of death, the most trivial things become the most profound lifelines. Anchor number 2, the inconvenience of others. 3 weeks after my deadline passed, month 5, my daughter Emily came home from school in tears. Complete hyperventilating meltdown. Her boyfriend of 2 years had dumped her via text message right before biology class. For the past 5 months, nobody brought me their problems. They shielded me from everything. I existed in a sterile bubble of fake positivity. When Emily walked by and crying, Sarah immediately tried to usher her out of the room. Let your father rest, she whispered loudly. I slammed my hand on the table. I am resting, I said. Come hear me. Emily sat beside me. She cried for 2 solid hours. She told me how humiliated she felt, how she thought they were going to get married, the whole teenage catastrophic heartbreak experience. And I listened. I didn't try to fix it. I didn't offer wise, dying man platitudes. I just held her hand and let her be utterly devastated in my presence. And secretly, I felt a massive surge of vitality. I wasn't the patient anymore. I was the father. She needed my shoulder. She needed my stability. The fact that her heart was broken meant I had to keep beating, help her carry the pieces. If this is resonating with you right now, if you are realizing that the burdens you complain about, actually the weights keeping you grounded to the earth, hit the like button on this video. Help me push this message to people who are drowning in a freedom that is actually killing them. Anchor number 3, a spiteful curiosity. As the months ticked by and I didn't die, the doctors became increasingly confused. Harrison would look at my scans, shake his head, and mumble about anomalous scar tissue stabilization. I developed a very dark, weighty, very satisfying sense of spite toward the statistics. The medical literature said I had a 2% chance of surviving 24 months. I looked at that 2% and thought, all right, let's see how wrong you guys are. I started tracking my own metrics, not obsessively, but with a detached amusement. Oh, I made it to Thanksgiving? Take that, Journal of Pulmonary Medicine. I survived to see my 50th birthday. I'm ruining your bell curves, gentlemen. Spite is a highly underrated emotion. We are taught that anger and defiance are toxic, but a righteous defiance, a stubborn refusal to be reduced to a paragraph in a medical textbook, can ignite a fire in your nervous system that burns hotter than any synthetic drug. I wanted to see how the story ended. I wanted to see if the new season of my favorite show was any good. I wanted to see if my neighbor ever figured out how to back his boat into his driveway without hitting the mailbox. A petty, stubborn curiosity to see what happens tomorrow is a powerful antidote to the grave. Anchor number 4, forgiveness of the self. This is the one that almost took me out. When you think you're going to die, you do an inventory of your regrets. I realized quickly that I wasn't just angry at the disease. I was drowning in guilt for my own past choices. At times I was a terrible husband. The years I worked 70 hours a week and barely knew my kids. The stupid, selfish mistakes on a young man trying to prove himself to a world that didn't care. I carried this guilt like a lead vest. And one night, unable to sleep because my oxygen levels dipped, I realized something critical. Guilt requires colossal amounts of energy. Self-hatred is exhausting. It takes a massive physiological toll on your body to constantly run the program I am a failure in your brain. If my dad was fighting a war against my own lungs, I could not afford to fight a second war against my own memory. I had to surrender. I had to forgive the stupid 30-year-old version of myself who thought success was a corner office. I had to forgive the 40-year-old version of myself who drank too much to cope with stress. I had to look at myself in the mirror, see the oxygen cannulas in my nose, the gray skin, and say, you did the best you could with the broken tools you had at time, and I forgive you. The amount of tension that released from my body that night was equivalent to dropping a 50-pound backpack I had been carrying for 2 decades. You cannot heal an organism that is actively attacking itself psychologically. If you are carrying guilt from 10 years ago, drop it today. The statute of limitations on all your past mistakes has expired. You are carrying a ghost. That ghost is stealing the oxygen from your present. Drop the bag. To do that, I want you to make a commitment right now. Subscribe to this channel. This isn't just a place for stories. It is a community of people who are actively choosing to forgive themselves and walk forward unburdened. Join us. You need your perspective as much as you need ours. Anchor number 5, the deliberate rejection of closure. This is controversial. Every therapist, every grief counselor, every book on dying talks about the importance of closure, tying up loose ends, saying your final goodbyes, making sure everything is perfectly settled so you can transition peacefully. I realize that closure is a trap. Closure is exactly what the death process wants. Closure is the final period at the end of the sentence. I intentionally stopped tying up loose ends. I started leaving threads dangling. I ordered a book on woodworking, a massive 800-page manual on joinery and cabinet making. I left it on my nightstand with a bookmark at page 12. I bought seeds for a type of oak tree that takes 20 years to grow. I planted them in the backyard. I started making long-term plans with Sarah. Hey, in 3 years, when Emily graduates college, let's rent an RV and drive to Montana. Sarah looked at me like I was insane. She knew the prognosis. I forced her to engage with the future. By actively planting flags in a future I was mathematically guaranteed never to see, I was telling my subconscious brain, We aren't done here. We have an oak tree to water, have an RV trip to plan. The human mind is a meaning-making machine. If you tell it the story is over, it shuts off the lights and locks the doors. If you tell it there is a sequel, it keeps the cameras rolling. 5 years later, here we are. Dr. No. Harrison still doesn't understand it. He calls me a statistical outlier. He calls it an anomaly. Called the profound medical ecophagness of a burst basement pipe. I'm not cured. Please understand that. The fibrosis hasn't vanished. I still have the scars. The disease is still hiding in the basement of my biology, waiting for our weak moment. But I am not waiting for him anymore. I don't sit in that leather armchair staring at the wall. I am too busy. The oak tree in my backyard is about 4 feet tall now. Last week, Emily brought over a young man she's been dating. I interrogated him for 20 minutes while pretending to clean my grill. It was fantastic. We are not victims of our expiration dates. We are the authors of the pages in between, right? And the end, whenever that end arrives. Do not wait for a terminal diagnosis to figure out what actually matters. You want to know what actually matters? Look at what you are responsible for. Look at the people who rely on you to show up, not the corporation that relies you to generate profit. The deeply flawed, beautiful, messy humans that need your shoulder when their hearts break. That is your anchor. That is your medicine. I'm challenging you right now. Go to the comment section and tell me what your anchor is. What is the one responsibility, the one inconvenient duty that keeps you rooted to this world when things get dark? Share it. Someone reading your comment might need exactly your anchor to survive their own storm. And if you know someone who has surrendered, someone who is sitting in that metaphorical armchair waiting for the end, send them this video. Don't frame it as advice. Just say, I thought you should hear this. They gave me 4 months. That was a half-a decade ago. I'm staying. I have a squeaky door to fix tomorrow.